being consistent is really important, but let's be consistent in what really matters in this holiday period.
Welcome back to the Athlete's Edge podcast. Today we're talking about a time of year that creates the biggest separation in athletes, and that's the Christmas break. Some athletes come back in January ahead, others come back way behind, and it has nothing to do with talent. It's simply how they use these next few weeks. So we're going to cover why holidays are where athletes drift or dominate, how much time off is actually okay, how to plan if you're going away, how to keep speed sharp with minimal effective dose, what to do when there's no gym, and the mindset that turns holidays into a competitive advantage. So, what do you mean when you say that the holidays create the biggest separation in athletes?
Well, holidays will expose habits. So during the year, or if you break it into school terms, most young athletes at school will have obviously their school routines, training. If you're post-school, you've probably got your work. Whereas over especially the Christmas holidays, often people get time off where businesses either shut down, obviously their school holidays. So a lot of that routine disappears. So things like, we see sleep gets really inconsistent. We see from a nutrition standpoint, so people either just out of routine will skip meals, or as a result of that make poorer food choices because they'll default to what's easy. They haven't done the prep. They'll skip training. They drift kind of through days and without that routine, and as a result lose all their rhythm. So we don't suddenly get unfit or slow or weak. It's the fact that just as our habits fall apart, we're not in that rhythm and seeing the results that we see when off the back of being consistent. So those that can stay consistent instead of dropping off will get ahead because not only are they improving, there's a lot that are going backwards, so that gap just gets bigger. This is why I think too, so we're talking about the rate of decay, and this is where we'll talk more specifically around some of the stuff, like you said, for max speed and what you can do on holidays. But I think people just almost flip this. For whatever reason, we think, okay, aerobic endurance is the priority. Whereas when we actually look at the days at which these things decay, which means go backwards, we see that max speed within about a range of 2 to 8 days starts to get worse. Our strength endurance is sort of that 10 to 20, so plus or minus 5 days around 15. Our anaerobic endurance, then our max strength and our aerobic endurance are the qualities that we tend to hold on to for longer without actually training them. So if we completely stop sprinting, we don't sprint across the week, then our speed drops. If we don't do as much max strength work, that will hold for longer. So being consistent is really important, but let's be consistent in what really matters in this holiday period.
So why do you think people get this backwards so much?
I think the aerobic stuff is just it's portrayed as a big difference maker. I think people talk about fitness and running, and 2K time trials are the current craze with pre-season state and all this sort of stuff. But I think that drives it. I also think it's kind of easy to make anyone tired. So you can just go for a run. You assume it's helping because it's hard. It's hard because the volume you do a relative intensity at. It's not hard in the sense that it's not intense. Because if it was really intense, you wouldn't be able to do it for 20 minutes or 30 minutes. You'd probably only be able to do it for 5 seconds before that quality drops. So I think people have in their mind that it's got to be a certain length, it's got to be a certain difficulty. So as a result, a lot of it falls into kind of this aerobic, anaerobic endurance standpoint. Not a lot's happening at that max speed end as a result.
A lot of athletes ask if it's okay to take a full week off. What's your stance on that?
Yeah, I think a week off potentially is a great thing. It really can help if you've earned it. And what I mean by that, if you've been consistent and you've had some really high quality training leading into that week, well then what's going to happen is a week off will actually wash out that fatigue, and we'll see your results spike off the back of it. You'll come back fresher, sharper, even just the mental reset that just having that week off creates. But if you're leading into that week off already inconsistent, a bit underdone with your training, you've been a bit lazy, then that week off is only just going to extend that sort of inconsistent period, which will set you back. So again, it links back to this a little bit. If it's just 1 week though, I wouldn't be too stressed. I think it's just, what did you do leading up to it? And think about that week off as almost a reward, like a deload, to actually see the improvement take place, because we know it's not, our results don't come from the training per se, it's how we recover from that stimulus that gives us the results.
And so what about athletes who go away for longer periods? Obviously pretty common this time of year, people getting away for holidays. How should they plan when it comes to their training?
Yeah, well, I think that's the key, is planning. It comes down to organisation. So if we start talking, closer to 2 weeks and beyond, the common thing we'll hear is there's no gym, there's nowhere to run, I didn't have any equipment. I would say that's not always 100% accurate. It might be the case when you get there, but to me, the good athletes are already thinking ahead. So they've already looked up local gyms. They're looking at their hotels, accommodation where they might have some basic gym access stuff. They've checked for local parks and footy ovals, soccer ovals, this sort of stuff, or outdoor basketball courts, whatever they need access to. They would have already mapped out some potential run routes before they even get there, so that they can just go check them out and make a pretty quick call on, I'll be able to do a few runs in this area. And they go away already having a bit of a plan on what sessions they're going to do. So I think if you haven't looked up your facilities, have no clue what your sessions are going to be, and then you show up, of course, it's going to be too hard and you're probably not going to get anything done. So I think the key is you don't need to be perfect. You just need to have enough structure to avoid a complete drop off. So again, I think that's where this helps. So I would argue that that can be done in a 20, 30 metre footpath. And it can be done in 10 minutes. So of all the things that gets done the least, and not only do we need to do it the more, do it the most, it's actually the easiest to do if you actually give it some thought.
And you kind of touched on it there, but one thing you're big on is the speed maintenance over the holidays. So what's the minimal dose athletes actually need?
I'll be looking at once a week, except if you've been consistent with it and you're having that week off, don't stress, but obviously if you can fit it in, great. In terms of a session, the beauty of max speed is if you've done some speed work with us, or even if you haven't, we're talking, over a 10, 20, 30, 40 metre distance, just literally 3 to 4 runs where you start easy, walk back, and then go a little bit, 10, 20% more, walk back. Just increase that 3 to 4 times. Build up to 100%. Do that 2 to 3 more times. Full walk back, slow walk back, full recovery each. Done. There's your speed session. So that can be done along the beach on the footpath, the local park, footy oval, even a outdoor court. It's literally need 30 metres. You could do a 10 metre version of it, or you could stretch it out to 20, 30, 40 metres of an actual sort of run through. If athletes aren't doing this in their breaks, it's not because they can't. It's just because, like we said, they haven't organised it. And off the back of that, I think goes a bit deeper around, their goals aren't big enough. They don't want it enough to actually get organised to keep consistent with their training, to keep improving. But that's probably another conversation. A few handful of sprints each week keeps you sharp, keeps your tissues conditioned, so that when you come back, you don't get that, full week of soreness. It's just massive for athletes during this time of year.
And what about the conditioning side of things? Do athletes need full running sessions in the holidays, or is it something maybe a bit more lighter? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, definitely. I think you need full, really crazy running sessions. Like we're talking about the aerobic endurance here. You've got a month before it starts to really go backwards. Having said that, I think it's a good chance. Like I said, this is where we talk about separation. So you've got the mindset of, if I'm going away and the environment is tricky and I'm not going to be doing a lot of great training, on a family holiday, whatever it is, maybe location's tough, maybe safety's a concern, maybe it's not the nicest neighbourhood, whatever it is, obviously you want to be mindful of that. If that's the case, then I'm just looking at what's the minimum thing. If you can do 1 or 2 runs over 2-3 weeks, it's probably enough, and just tick the legs over. Just like we said, so that when you come back, you're not completely deconditioned to just running, even just the skill, let alone just the fitness quality. But if you can, then you're going to structure your training a bit more, which obviously, we do programs in and around that. That can be light jogs, can be run on the beach, run, walk intervals. You can do, like I said, run with the family, go exploring, hiking, like all that stuff. I think is just movement and exercise. Make the use of the environment you're in. Don't use it as an excuse.
And yeah, one of those excuses that you mentioned earlier was the gym access. And so some athletes, like you said, might genuinely not have access to a gym. So what should they kind of focus on?
Yeah. Well, the first thing, the beauty of this is look at the thing that decays the fastest, strength endurance. We all know how to do push-ups. You can hang, do inverted rows off a fence. You can do some higher rep endurance type strength work just with body weight. Max strength obviously takes some equipment, but the beauty is, it's 30 days. So you're probably not going to lose too much of your max strength in a short holiday. And if you are going to be away for a couple of weeks, well, you can actually still do some of the strength endurance type work because you only need your body weight, and that goes with you everywhere. But on top of that, if I was going to go specific on a couple of things, I think mobility this time of year, because we're traveling, we're sitting, like we're talking about, not in routines, even in different beds, so you wake up, your back and neck, and that can be a bit stiffer. So I think if you can keep some mobility work in, then you're going to come back just obviously feeling better, moving better when you get back into it. So the beauty of that is we all know some simple stretches. Our programs over the holidays will have, all our sessions keep running. Well, what's the first 15 minutes? Mobility is included in there, so they'll all know exercises and have access to things to do. The other one that I think ticks a lot of these boxes, including some of our max strength and our speed, is some of our plyometric stuff. So again, the beauty of a lot of plyometrics is you only need your body. So again, you carry that with you. Because what it does is it's going to give us some exposure to some of that fast eccentric work, as well as that intensive, jumping and driving and stuff off the other side of it. But keeping that exposure in is going to be really beneficial for not only your performance, but when you get back to training. If you've done some jumps, you've got to land, which is great then for when you get back to footy training or netball, and you've got to do some decelerations. So you've had some of those fast braking forces being applied consistently, even though you've been on holiday. So things like snap downs, so like our tall to short stuff that we've done in warm-ups, some of our pogo stuff, some other landing drills, so like, lateral bound and stick, that sort of stuff. Just, basic pliers in just like a counter movement jump, our bounding, our split jumps, all that sort of stuff is going to be really good, which essentially is our velocity block. So again, our athletes will have access to that all through their holidays. So there's really no excuse because you don't need any equipment and all you need is a living room. Not even, just a 1 by 1 meter square and you can do most things.
And so to wrap this episode up, what mindset should athletes take into this holiday period?
Well, I think the thing I said there, which I didn't mind, was look for the solutions, not the excuses. The holiday or going away isn't what's putting you behind, it's your disorganisation. So, and that's not on parents, I don't think. Even for 12, 13-year-olds, we see our best athletes, not necessarily the best right now at their sport, but the best in terms of that buy-in to what we're doing and their own improvement, are the ones that take ownership of it. So if you genuinely want to get better over the holidays, you can run anywhere, you can sprint anywhere, you can do your mobility anywhere, you can do your plyos anywhere. So it's just planning ahead. Wherever you go, you can have that. So if you stay connected to your goals, remember why you're doing this, and that's going to be a bit different for everyone, then probably they don't go away for a month. They're not going to disappear. But if you are, because that's what's happening, then you can still stay consistent and just focus on, like we talked about here, what you need to work on, and then really use your holidays as a competitive advantage, not as a setback.